bat, I'm gonna heat this milk. It's basically milk and water that's been mixed together, half and half, 50-50, and I'm gonna mix with this about a tablespoon of honey after it's been heated. And so I'm gonna heat it first for about 20 seconds in here. And while that's doing that, I'm gonna put this honey in this bowl, which is about a tablespoon, give or take, voila. And I'm actually gonna add the yeast. Should I add both bags of yeast, Mom?
1.5.
Okay, cool. One thing that I do want to mention too is that this main show that we're trying to do here, and the concept is really to teach people how to save recipes and how to save the planet and how to enjoy food and wine while you're doing it. So if you stick your finger in it and it burns your finger, then it's too hot and it'll burn the yeast and the yeast won't rise. So it's not too hot, so I'm just going to mix it together. And then I'm using one of these spoons that, oh, so awesome, Mom, got everything ready. So mix it up like that. And this will take about 3 minutes and it'll start looking like a cappuccino. And when it looks like a cappuccino, you know you're good. So while that's doing that, I'm gonna come over here and I've got 2 cups of flour in here. Organic flour, any way possible to use organic anything is the key. Same with going to a farmer's market. I think it's so much more important getting produce from within a 20-mile radius of where you live, because if you're not, then you're wasting fuel and probably buying a lesser quality ingredient. And basically pizza is a flatbread basically, and back in the day when they had, you know, caveman days, well not quite caveman days, but when they built huge fires, they put stones around the fires, and on the stones they would cook food because the stones would get so hot. And so what they do is they get like flour and water, mix it together, and basically put it into knead it into a dough, and then make little pieces and put them onto the hot stone, and it would make this flatbread. And that's how kind of pizza was invented. And it wasn't invented by the Italians, even though a lot of people think it was. So anyway, very exciting. And we're gonna mix olive oil and salt and herbs. We've got a little bit of semolina flour here, which is flour that's made with corn. We've got salt, and we've got mixed herbs, and we've got the olive oil. And these are all the things that we're gonna add, and 2 more cups of flour. So 4 cups of flour total, 1 cup of milk, honey, and yeast and water that are all mixed together in equal parts. There we go. Gonna put this on high. Garlic, one of my favorite things in the world. Best way to open up some garlic is basically just slamming it as hard as you can on the counter, and that basically makes it all fall apart like that. Once it all falls apart, you take a couple of heads. We're going to use, I think, 3 cloves of garlic. And to take the skin off the garlic, which a lot of people sit there and try to do it like this, and it's going to take way too long. So what we're going to do is we're just going to slam it with a knife like this 3 times. Bam, bam, bam. And then the outside comes right off. It's really easy.
Whack it.
Whack it.
Whack it.
The best thing to do is always to have a glass of wine close to you when you're doing this, because you know, then if you feel insecure about something you're doing, you can always have a gulp of wine. Make you feel much better.
But when you're working in the kitchen,
Yeah,
use the mug of wine, not a wine glass.
Exactly, because otherwise you're going to tip over. Too easy to tip over. So then we slam it again. I slam it a lot to get it all squished up like that. We'll do it there too, and there too. Now these little green parts, if you can see that, you see this little green inside of the garlic, that is a little bit more bitter than the rest of the garlic. So if you're feeling kind of picky, then you can take that stuff out. But if you're cooking it, like I am, there's no really point to taking that out. But if you're making a salad dressing, then it's probably a good idea to take that stuff out. So then we just chop it up pretty coarsely, so it's not too minced up, but that's perfect. And then we got this olive oil. It's about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You want to make sure your pan's really hot, and the way you know that is the olive oil will act like water in the pan when it's really hot. And that'll be a good sign that it's ready to go. And another thing is, you're going to hear that sizzle. If you don't get a sizzle, then you're not searing in the flavors that you want. So add in the garlic first, and then we're gonna put some salt and pepper in that and some herbs. But first we're gonna add the tomatoes. And the reason I add sugar in this recipe is sugar brings out a lot of flavor in tomatoes. But before you add any liquids or anything to this, you want this to start to go golden brown a little bit. So it's got to start getting that toasty, wonderful garlic flavor. And it's almost there. Get a spoon here. I don't know, I usually like to, I think wooden spoons are great. Cutting boards made out of wood are awesome, very important. Nowadays it's hard to find those things because of the laws that we have in this country. So if you overcook the garlic, if it starts to go dark brown, it's going to become bitter and it's not going to taste that good. See there, it's starting to go brown, so I'm going to add the tomatoes. That's my favorite noise. It means that things are actually blending together there. And if you could just smell this, God, I wish you guys could walk through that camera and smell this. While this is all cooking down, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of mixed herbs. And this is rosemary, thyme, oregano, and parsley, give or take. We've got the sugar, and it's about a teaspoon of sugar. And we're going to use just a pinch of salt and a couple punani's of pepper. There we go. Pepper is my favorite spice, along with anything that's pretty in a bathing suit. I'm going to put some wine in this too, so once this starts to blend together a little bit, I'm just going to add a little touch of wine out of my own stash. Very nice. And then we've got also some blended tomatoes, as well as the big fat ones that we had. So there we go. Gosh, this smells really good okay already. So one other thing I'm going to do to this, the only reason I put a little pinch of salt is because one of the great things that my mom did when I was growing up is she used anchovy with most of her savory recipes, and instead of using salt like in a lot of Asian food, they use soy sauce to give that salt to the recipe. We've got 2 fillets of anchovy and a little bit of olive oil, and I'm just going to muddle this together, basically make it a paste. So you kind of just spin it around like this. This is a pestle and mortar. You can also do this in the Cuisinart, but it makes it a lot more difficult in the Cuisinart. Because you can imagine there's so little stuff here, you know, it really wouldn't do much. So I'm just going to take this off of there, like that, and then take all this out of there and add it into there. And there we go, it's starting to boil. It's a good sign. Now if you don't like anchovies, I would recommend going and buying white anchovies, because white anchovies, they're a lot more expensive, but they don't have that same real pungent fish taste. But only using 2 fillets of anchovy for a recipe this big, yeah, you're not going to taste that anchovy taste. A lot of people find that offensive unless they really like fish. So I'm just going to put these out of the way. By this point, I think that my yeast is probably getting pretty close to mixing with the flour. So I'm going to leave this to cook for a little bit. I think it's important. I'm going to put some fresh herb in there, but I want to taste. We've got to taste all the time.
That's what the spoons are for.
Cool. I love moms. So it tastes really good already, but the more it reduces, the richer and better the flavors you're going to get. So we're just going to let that do its magic. 1 bay leaf, an extra touch of wine just because I like wine, and then the lid. So I'm gonna leave that on, put it down to medium. Sweet, there we go. Now let's come over here. I've got the flour in here, 2 cups, and it's been about 5 minutes. You've got the water and the milk on the bottom. If you can see, it looks a little bit like a cappuccino, and on the top you've got all this foam. And so basically that's the yeast acting, and we pour that in there. Come saw, turn this on, pulse it a little bit, and it's going to start to come together. And I keep on adding flour until I get the right consistency. I want it to look like breadcrumbs. I like to shake my blender just to make sure it's a good quality industrial blender. There we go. Now it's getting into a dough, so I'm going to add a little bit more flour because I don't want it to be too doughy. I want it to look like breadcrumbs. So I'm going to add some more flour. There we go. That's what I'm looking for right there. So now I'll show you guys this. This is basically what I'm looking for. It looks like breadcrumbs. Or dough that hasn't been put together yet. And if you take it in your hands and you squish it up, you can squish it into a little ball, and it makes a little ball of dough. So you're in the right track if you get that. So now we want to add the rest of the flour, and then some salt. I would say about a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons. And then fresh herbs or dried herbs, whichever you have. I think dried herbs works better for this because fresh herbs have too much moisture. And then we're gonna add a little pinch of this flour, which is the semolina flour, but this is really what we're gonna use for rolling, to roll it out with more than anything else. But I'm gonna add this olive oil while it's blending. So. Sometimes you might need to add a little bit more milk or water. Oh, this looks really good. It's actually even more so looking like breadcrumbs now. Shake it a little bit. Some people might want to open it up and then take the sides down like that because they all get caught up. Which is what I was doing instead, was just shaking the instrument or shaking the machine. You can do the same thing by doing that. So I'm gonna add the rest of the liquid. And like I said, you know, this recipe, I've always thought, is more of looks and feel than it is exact measurements. I think the best way to cook is by doing it by feel. It's kind of like the bedroom. The best way to make love is by feel. So let's see here, we open this up, we take a piece of this dough, and see how it's still crumbly a little bit, so it needs a little bit more liquid in there. So I'm gonna put this back on. And blend it up one more a little bit with some of this. Bada boom, bada bing. And within a couple seconds, you'll have exactly what you're looking for. That's it right there. There we go. That looks exactly how we want it. When you touch it with your finger, it kind of bounces back. So that's very much what we look for. You want to maybe just give it another quick second. There we go. We're going to take this out of here and just put it onto a floured cutting board. This is that semolina flour I was telling you guys about. So I'm going to get this bowl. Now I'm going to put some olive oil inside the bowl because I don't want the dough to stick to the bowl. So I'm just going to brush this all around, coat it, make sure it's all coated on all sides. There we go. And then we're going to put this right here. First, we want to take the blade out. We're going to leave that in there, and it takes about an hour, 45 minutes for it to rise. And that's when we do the kneading, right? We do the kneading after the rising period. I'm just going to pour a little tiny bit of olive oil on top of that.
You do the kneading first.
I'm supposed to knead now? Oh, whoops. So I'm going to knead now. Okay. So, the kneading, this is my favorite part. Oh, this looks good. So in kneading, you can use fist, or palm. Either way, you're basically... What am I doing? I'm basically getting the elasticity of the dough to be more flexible, so it rises better. Ends up making a more layered, flaky pizza crust. There we go. And if you don't put enough of this flour, you're going to have a real hard time getting this dough not to stick. So you want to do this for about 3-4 minutes. Until the dough starts to look like an oily piece of skin. Is that the best way to describe it, Mum? A warm bum.
Brown, smooth.
There we go. That's probably enough, I think. It's starting to get that shininess to it. Warm, round, and smooth. Oh, hot. There we go. Just like a baby's bum. There we go. So we're going to leave that in there. We're going to cover it with a damp cloth and put it in a warm place, like your grandmother's bedroom. Just going to put some water on that. There we go. A little olive oil. Push the top. There we go. And we'll just put the wet towelette over it. Cover it like that, put it in a warm spot, which is actually the bathroom in this house. So now I'm gonna go back to the sauce and make sure that it's doing everything it should. Oh, it smells really good. Wish you guys could smell this. So this sauce is actually coming together really well. I'm gonna keep it covered. It still needs to cook for about another 10 minutes. But while it's doing that, I'm actually gonna blanch some tomatoes in boiling water. So I'm gonna grab about 5 tomatoes here. And these tomatoes, because it's not the season, they're not 100% ripe. So boiling them like this helps make them ripe too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put an X in the top of all of these like this. So now what happens when I boil them, the skin's gonna peel right off really easily. I'm gonna put these tomatoes in there. I would say about 3 minutes, right Mom? Boil those tomatoes 3 minutes. And of course, in the professional world, I would have had that already done, so now all I have to do is like show you the finished product, but because we're actually in a real kitchen and not a studio, you're gonna have to freaking wait. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna drink some wine and think about my next move.
Ice.
Ice. Yes, so we want to get a bowl with ice in it and water. With a slotted spoon, we're gonna pick these bad daddies right out of here. And we're gonna put them into the ice water. Comme ça. These tomatoes will start to peel away. So they peel right off. Kind of like that. So I'm gonna get a bowl. So I'm actually gonna use this pot. Cut these up into cubes. I think the best way to cut up a tomato into cubes is by cutting it lengthways. Get rid of those. Like that. And then going like this. Of course, when you cut tomatoes, you're better off cutting the skin side down. So for example, when you're cutting a tomato, when you cut the skin, it tends to bend it like that, which bruises the flesh, and you're better off cutting it upside down with the skin side on the cutting board. It makes it easier to cut, and it's more gentle to the fruit. Tomato is a fruit, even though a lot of people think it's a vegetable. Once we cut all these up, then we're going to add them into a bowl. We're going to put these tomatoes in this bowl. We're going to add
Sugar and cognac.
sugar and cognac. Where's the sugar? I think I used it already. Put it in here. Wow, that smells really good. Oh yeah. That's bloody yummy. From my tummy. We're gonna put about a teaspoonful or a tablespoon of sugar in there. Mix those up. A little bit of pepper, salt. No pepper, no salt.
No good watery.
And brandy basically is the same as cognac. Cognac is brandy that's made in the town of Cognac in France. But you can use pretty much any brandy, Christian Brothers, whatever it is. And I would say about 2 tablespoons.
Literally puts the ferment, or starts the tomatoes to ferment.
So mix all that up,
Tastes like ripe tomatoes,
and
no?
then we let them sit for a couple minutes. And they'll end up tasting like really good ripe tomatoes just straight out of the garden. So then we never throw these out. We throw these into a container that we have over here. It's going to save all the stuff because it's going to go in the compost out in the yard, which is going to help the soil for my garden, which I grow a lot of these yummy vegetables in. This tomato sauce is almost done.
And then that goes...
Fresh tomatoes. Oh, these are so yummy.
Okay.
So you want to taste these now. You can't taste brandy. You taste fresh tomatoes. That's it. It's really, really good. What we're gonna do is we're gonna finish off this pizza. We got the cheese already grated right here. Got it all ready before you guys were here. We got the finished pizza dough that's been risen, and I've kneaded it out, made big rounds. So we got 3 different
mozzarella,
cheeses.
cheddar, right.
Monterey Jack, mozzarella, which is a melting cheese. Monterey Jack, pretty salty, and the cheddar, which has had lots of salt. Very good. So once we have those pizza doughs rolled out, we basically cook them once in the oven for 5 minutes. So you've got a pizza dough that's actually been partly cooked already. And if you don't do that, what happens is you've got a soggy bottom. In a lot of cases, if you don't cook the pizza like that, unless you have a pizza kitchen or a pizza oven, which is like a huge expense. Most people don't have those in their house. it's better off to do it that way. So then, of course, the first thing we're gonna put is the tomato sauce onto the pizza, then some tomatoes, and then the cheese, and some basil leaves. And then bake that in the oven, the hottest you can get the oven to be, 550 degrees, napalm, 600, whatever it goes up to, the hottest it can get. And it doesn't take more than 5 to 7 minutes for it to cook, or until the cheese is just going brown, and then it's done. And then you'll have like this amazing, wonderful meal for your kids and yourself and your family and your loved ones. That's cooking pizza in the Calamity Kitchen, baby. In the Calamity Kitchen, baby. That's cooking pizza in the Calamity Chicken. That's cooking chicken in the Pizza Calamity, baby. I can't say fucking shit, sorry. That's cooking really good pizza in the Calamity Kitchen, baby. Gotta keep it right. There we go.